Cher, welcome. It's so good to see you.
Ben,
Everybody, yeah, I want to welcome Cher. I've known her for about 8 years, and she is a Marshall Goldsmith executive 100 executive coach and a C-suite advisor on talent, and does many things. And I first met Cher years ago when we were both kind of in interesting places in our careers, on teams, telling a lot of truth to power, taking risks. And when I wanted to do a short little video here on quiet acts of revolution, Cher came to mind first, because I know, having spoken over years and years and years, like this is a fun topic for us. And we talk about it anyway. So why not record a little bit? So Cher, welcome. It's good to have you here.
Ben, thank you so much for having me. It's just such a pleasure to share what our conversations are like, and hopefully can make a difference and help some people who are on teams and are experiencing some type of challenge or insights that we can be helpful.
Yeah. And we're both coaches. And I know that when we're together, we kind of both coach each other. Like a lot of deep listening, a lot of curiosity, reframing topics and how we might find paths forward. So maybe we just do that here for just a couple of minutes. So I want to tap into some of your wisdom. When this topic comes up, like quiet little moments of revolution that anybody maybe on a team could do if they felt like the conditions were right, if they felt safe, if it was a meaningful topic to them. What comes to mind for you? What encouragement would you give to me, to a team member, like when it's time for a small quiet act of saying something for revolution? What would that be like?
Gosh, that's such a great topic. And I think through my own experience and the lessons I've learned from not having a quiet revolution at certain points in my career. But I think the quiet ones are the ones that are most effective. And I think, being wiser than I was 8 years ago, I think the first one, because you mentioned a little bit about psychological safety, but I think, we've talked so much about that. And I think sometimes it feels very pie in the sky for people. Oh, well, they have a cycle, what does that take? They don't like, we'll never get close to that. But I think the step before that could be around asking questions. And not just asking questions of leadership, but really, I spent time this week with Dr. Jeff Wetzler and his new book coming out called Ask, about tapping into the hidden wisdom on your team that people really aren't sharing really what they're thinking. And there's an exercise that he talks about where for years people said, like, here's what you would answer a question and here's that piece that you didn't share. There was like 80% of the things that people don't share. And so to be able to ask questions and create some norms around asking those questions, we create that safety so that it's not an ideal, it's like an active process.
Hmm. The norms are important for that, because like if what we see when people ask questions or they take a little bit of a risk, like is they get bopped on the head, they get shut down, they get shamed, they get blamed. Then what we do is we make sure that nothing ever really is learned or changes inside of teams, right? And so
Right.
to open ourselves up, it's making space for a new norm, a new thing where it's okay for you to ask a pretty challenging question, in the right spirit. Yeah, that kind of opens up something that's a portal to a conversation we've never had before.
Absolutely. And I think it's asking, I don't think it's just the truth to power hard questions. I think it's just creating that norm of asking questions and asking the people that we don't usually ask. And then also then creating, I also had a great talk this week with Ashley Goodall and talking about rituals and secrets on teams that, creating some type of ritual around taking a risk, right? And that could be, the walk down to Starbucks after the big team, or, celebrating something so that we mark and then train the brain. If I take this risk, I get this reward, right? So just these small, quiet pieces that normalize us getting to having this experience of psychological safety that doesn't, it seems kind of idealistic for people.
Yeah. And risk taking is an important concept here, because there's probably a difference between foolish risk
Mhm.
and measured risk. Like it must, like, do you, in your experience, does it take some initial wisdom for people to say, that's probably a risk I should take, not in public, but maybe privately first with somebody? Or, um, wow, how I say this is important. The words I choose, the way I frame this is going to be, if I do it this way, it might be more consumable than if I do it that way. Are there any, I don't know, I wouldn't call them tips and tricks, but just pieces, nuggets of wisdom we could give some team members out there, like, we would encourage you to try it this way or to do these things?
So my original education is in anthropology, and so I'm an applied anthropologist in the corporate section, and I often talk to leaders and high potential people who are growing their careers about talk to people in a way that they can hear you.
Mm.
And so I think it's really important to think about, and it's not just empathy, it really is what's important to this person. Because if you're on a team with them or they're a leader from a team and you watch them, you know what's important to them, you know what they're focused on. We have a lot of the what's, we all know the what's the strategy, what are the KPIs or the OKRs, what is this? But it's the how we do things that I think really makes the difference. And that speaking to people in a way that they can hear us is an easy way to think about the how.
So, do you think a single person, just a sole person on a team, can have a level of impact like that? Maybe like the butterfly wings in Japan start a hurricane on the other side of the world. Like that, there is really ways in which a single individual can create that? Or would you say more towards like, well, you better get your ducks in a row and marshal a team and have a, get the politics done in the background. So, like, how naive are we about this? Would some people just say like, "Oh yeah, you're just asking people to commit ritual suicide in a team by speaking their mind"? Like, what really is possible for us?
Yeah, I don't, and I wouldn't say that. I think first of all, on most teams, you have people who are there's a spectrum of speaking truth to power. There's a spectrum of extroversion and introversion. There's a spectrum of people who how much their work life is their identity versus their personal identity. And so, hopefully you're going to have people of different the world is created for individuals, even though we're focusing on, we have so much research around teams being what truly moves and changes the world, right? And so you do have some different individuals. And that my risk tolerance on justice and speaking truth to power is a lot higher than others, right? Because that's a value that I have. And I'm definitely not suggesting that people follow my world, but I don't think it's pie in the sky to ask a couple of questions. And if you don't want to speak truth to power, you can ask somebody else, what do you think we should add? So it's not going against, right? Like it's what are we missing? And as we create that norm on a team, what are we missing? What are we not including? How could we look at this differently? Those are not massive challenges to leadership or an organization. We have all normalized growth mindset versus closed mindset, but it's the actions, small actions around that, which I think most organizations have a good tolerance for at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, on a previous episode of this, we talked about micro dosing ownership. Like it's these quiet little moments. They might look like 1/10 of 1% of a something, but when we start to build that muscle of just taking these micro moments to own our lived experience. So you frame this as like, what are we missing here? And I think why isn't it fair for me to say, here's what I'm missing in my lived experience in this team? Maybe nobody else. Would love to check in with you and see if we could name it and own it together. Um, and maybe I'm the only one missing it. And that's good data for me, right? But it does allow me to speak to my lived experience, the thing I want to have if we're going to spend this time together, how I'd like to have our time be experienced by me.
Right. And if that's even challenging for someone, right? We could go to the ritual conversations. What rituals could you create as a team that wouldn't be sharing a vulnerability, but that might create a different energy or connectivity so that it normalizes that the next stage is around sharing lived experience or asking questions.
Mm,
Like it can be baby steps.
yeah. Rituals. I like them because because they don't have to be built new every time. We can just say this is a norm, this is a ritual. I know that when we have a look on our face, we should pause and just take a moment to talk about something, or we're going to do a check-in or a checkout or something simple that allows us to connect first as humans. I think when we feel seen and heard, then we have the opportunity to speak that in a better way.
And I completely agree. And there just are some business cultures that are not ready for that yet. We are lucky in the Western world and in North America that that's more accepted. So it might be a ritual in bringing people together or in sharing something that precludes that kind of the ability. Yeah.
Well, we only have the culture we have, the one we're in, the one we get to live in and impact. Yeah.
So I want to ask you a question.
Yeah, ask me one.
So on this quiet revolution, what is the thing that's been most surprising? Because you spend all of your time on teams, and we can sit here and say all these things that like, yes, I see this and that, but like, where have you been most like, wow, I can't believe that I've experienced that, and what was the outcome on it?
I was just started coaching a new leadership team this week. And I was with them in person, and I constructed a question for everybody to give some thought to and then reflect on. And of course, I asked the question, we put it out, and it was a fairly safe question, but it was a little edgy. It really was an opportunity for somebody to dive in. And of course, there's silence, and I'm okay with silence. I just experience that as people are thinking more and they're waiting to see if they can get up their gumption. And quietly from the other side of this room, um, one of the team members spoke up. And if you had asked me to put bets, I would have said, she's probably the last one who will ever speak up around this table. And that's just my magical thinking, my prejudice, whatever. But she said, I've never said anything like this in a team anywhere at any time, but I want to go first. I think this team has a real opportunity to grow the way we think about where we're going and how we create that as a leadership team. And I just said, I think that's one of the most courageous things I've seen all week. Like, she just came from somewhere and spoke her truth, and it didn't confront anybody, and it was oriented towards a positive future and things that we could own together and create together. But it was also her lived experience and something that she needed to say and had never said. And I just thought, like, those always take my breath away. That in the right conditions, perhaps with a coach, but maybe even not, like in the right conditions, in our human relationships, in our teams, that's available to us. And then I think there's 100 forces in our organizations and society and team that squelch it, but we can come back and just say, here in this moment, it's still available to us. And I do believe that 30 seconds of courage can put that revolution in motion, not because she's a revolutionary, but simply because she spoke her truth.
I love that. And I love that it's like a seed, right?
Yeah.
And not every seed is going to grow into a sunflower. But if you had enough seeds throughout that season and, before planting in early spring, like you will have sunflowers.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think we should go plant some seeds. Thank you. I want to thank you. I think we could do this maybe on another topic or for much, much longer, but let's call it there. Rituals, seed planting, I think just inhabiting the moment. Like, this is my moment to speak my truth and my lived experience and to stimulate something better among us. I think those are good things.
Yeah. And in the midst of all of that, like breathing and like really listening rather than hearing, and and like letting things move through you rather than taking everything on. And yeah, it's just such a, I feel honored to be able to work with teams like this, and always I'm honored to spend time with you and learn from you.
Likewise. Cher, thank you very much.
Take care. Bye, Ben.